I am back. It is me, LJ27. Y'all know me. Y'all know who I am. Y'all know what I'm all about. Y'all know what we're here for. We're here today for Lovecraft Country. We're here to talk about some things. I'm going to have some of my fellow reviewers in and out. They'll come in. They'll come out. We'll talk. They'll say, they have to go. But even if it's just me talking, that's enough, you know. But it's not so easy. Anyway, so I have one of my fellow reviewers that is here, ready to talk. I'm talking fast. Hold on, I know what that is. Hold on. All right, that should be better. Sorry about that, y'all. Y'all know sometimes technology isn't what it should be, but that should work that out and that should be better. Everybody, we good? Good. All right. So we're going to go ahead without further ado, go ahead and get started. I don't want to keep my people long as they come in and out. I do have one, like I said, one of my fellow reviewers here. If you are ready backstage, sir, please put a thumbs up. All right. So I bring on one of my fellow reviewers here. I will let him introduce himself. If you are not already familiar with him and his channel, I'll let him give you all of those good things and tidbits.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I appreciate you reaching out. Excited to be here to communicate to your wonderful audience and the community you're building over here on your YouTube channel. So thank you for having me on. And yeah, guys, my name is Elliot. I'm from Movie Files here on YouTube and shows like Lovecraft, you know, Raised by Wolves, Fargo, you name it. I'm trying to cover every show and show a little bit of diversity. You know, it's nice to see people of color talking about sci-fi shows, dramas, comedies, and you name it. So that's what I like to do on my channel. As far as TV goes, as well as movies and then live streams. So definitely check me out on YouTube. And then if you guys want to get some of my insights on movie news, casting news, all that fun stuff, check me out on Instagram and Twitter. So yeah, man, excited to get this thing. Talk about Lovecraft, man. Very excited.
I am excited as well. Like I said, there are other people who do have the invites. I've been trying to coordinate schedules for the last couple of days. So if they come, they will be here and we'll discuss. All right. So I got a couple questions. And I'll definitely take your questions. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And we'll try to address them as we go through. And feel free either ask questions as you or chime in your questions or so forth whenever you are ready. My first question that I want to talk about is when you first saw the trailer, because I remember seeing the trailer. Yeah. And I really didn't think about it at first. When I first saw the trailer, I wanted to know what were your thoughts when you first saw the trailer the first time. Were you hooked?
Yeah, I mean, so first and foremost, my fandom of HBO goes beyond, you know, the Lovecraft of this past August, you know, from The Wire to Game of Thrones, obviously, to True Blood. I mean, I love HBO. So I'm always excited for the next big hit. And it's been something last few, you know, years, there's been a gap for Sundays. It hasn't been a show that we can all get excited about for Sundays since Game of Thrones for me, honestly. So I was already sold when I saw HBO. And then I saw the cast. Journey Smollett, you know, Jonathan Majors, Courtney B. Vance. I mean, the list goes on and on. So the cast sold me. And then I'm a sucker for horror movies, horror shows. Big fan of the sci-fi, and then it just all that stuff just encompassed me definitely being on top of this and watching this as soon as it drops. And then you see Jordan Peele's attached to it, J.J. Abrams. Wasn't too familiar with Misha Green. I didn't watch her show Underground, but I definitely will after watching you know, Lovecraft. But it was just all those things to me was just like, oh yeah, I'm going to be checking this out every single Sunday and couldn't wait for it.
For me, at first it was I liked the trailer and what hooked me were the actors at first. However, after you got through all of the actors and the great people that they had, that was going to be on it, knowing Misha Green and having seen Underground and being so upset about what happened to Underground. Underground was so good.
Got canceled early, right?
So good.
Something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Even to this day, what's my girl name? Start with a V, who played Ernestine, who was on How to Get Away with Murder. To this day, she will always be Steen. Okay, I can't think of her name. Oh man. Anyway, but Amira Vaughn. That's her name. Amira Vaughn.
Yep.
She will always be Steen from Underground for me. But when I saw it was Misha Green and knowing HBO, because HBO doesn't mind throwing their money around.
Yeah.
I felt like, okay, this might be something that, I can get behind and get into. And so first episode comes out and I immediately thought about Underground. I thought that I immediately had the frame of mind thinking Underground. And it was totally not Underground. And I was here for it though. I was here. I talked to some friends. One of my good girls, really BTV, who's another reviewer. She doesn't review Lovecraft Country, but she's another reviewer. She I called her and she was not here for the first episode. She was not
really.
She was not here for it. I told her
just not what she was expecting, or just she's not a big horror fan, or it was just
she's not big into sci-fi horror and all of that stuff. So I was like, yes. She was like,
no.
But she was like, nope. But what hooked her was the history of it all, the Jim Crow laws, all of the racial dynamics. She's a student of history. She teaches history, so she loved that part. So that hooked her. I got on all of it myself. So that is what got me. Now, when you watch episode 1, were you immediately just like, okay, I'm full steam ahead, or did you still have like, I don't know?
No, I mean, for me, I'm a big TV watcher, man, and I'm a big advocate of your pilot can make or break the experience moving forward, right? It sets the tone for what you're getting into. So knowing that some of my favorite shows of all time have had terrible pilots, like I think of The Office, I think of a couple other classic sitcoms or shows that just have like mediocre. I mean, Game of Thrones, I mentioned earlier, they had a okay premiere, but this show floored me. Number one, like you just had mentioned, I'm a big sci-fi fan. So when we open up the show with Cthulhu and Jackie Robinson, all that stuff that we got in the opening sequence, I'm like, oh, I'm sold already. And then as the show kind of progresses, I'm born and raised in Chicago, seeing, on the streets of Chicago back in the early 50s. And then the world building, Ruby, Letty, Montrose, meeting all of this wonderful cast, this black cast, primarily black cast in front and behind the camera, which I love. And then you start to realize, oh, this show isn't about creatures that bump at night in the woods, which I love that scene, but it's more about, like you just mentioned, the Jim Crow era, and the real monsters of the show is the racism and how the black are oppressed and how that kind of mixes in with the sci-fi element. So I mean, literally that first episode is one of the best pilots I've ever seen, if I'm being honest. So I love that first episode. I was hooked from the first frame of the show.
I was hooked from the first episode. I was here for it now. And I think, and I would talk with my best friend about this at the end of every episode. He would call me or I would call him, and our response to each other was the same every episode. It was always, that was a lot. We always had the same response every episode. We were like, that was a lot. And it just went from there. The conversation went from there because it was like every episode was its own movie, its own. It could stand alone as its own separate entity. It could be parceled out and pieced out and just taught or whatever. It was so funny to me because I always left there feeling that was a lot. Even my least favorite episode, which I'll talk about later, was still a great episode and will probably be a best episode for 85% of television shows that you have going on.
Yeah.
So you got to pay attention to everything. So when you reviewed this show, what was it like reviewing this for you as opposed to other things that you reviewed?
I think the biggest thing for me is just not, getting caught up in the sci-fi elements, getting caught up in, some of the it is an anthology series, so some of the stuff wasn't answered from one episode to the next, but it was kind of going to a different frame of mind of appreciating something that's pretty groundbreaking. Again, we talked about it with the primarily Black African American cast in front and behind the camera, but also we talked about it off camera in regards to, I don't want to say history lesson, because sometimes history lessons can sound kind of boring and it sounds like they're beating you over the head with some message or whatever the case may be. But for me, it was just acknowledging the factual authenticity of the Jim Crow era, whether we see a Jigga Bobo episode with Emmett Till and everything that went down with that and how that affected the community, the Black community, and really sparked the civil rights movement, or you have, instances of police brutality and how we're seeing that now in the media and in the episode where, I can't breathe. I mean, there's so many different layers of the show kind of implemented, spoken words, seeing the real historic people in real life being in the show. I mean, it was just paying attention to those things. And like I said, not getting too caught up in like, oh, monsters, sci-fi, creepy, haunted house, ghosts. It was just like appreciated, again, this groundbreaking story that we've never really seen with the backing of a show, of a platform like HBO. So it was just really kind of focusing in on the layers, the messages, the importance of seeing Black people on the screen, having Indiana Jones episodes, haunted house episodes. So it was just, like I said, paying attention to just not the surface level stuff, but stuff that was under the undertones and kind of the through line that they were trying to present to Black trauma and generational trauma and things of that nature.
For me, when I was reviewing, it was like almost studying for a class, because I remember doing my reviews. Yeah. And so when I started to get people that will pop out of the bushes and leave comments that normally never comment on some of my reviews, and so it became, I don't want to say oppressive sometimes, but I would go into it. At first I would try to do my reviews like normal, but quickly by second episode, I knew I had to watch it first for myself, just so I could just enjoy what I was watching, because watching it with the eyes of a reviewer doesn't give you a lot of time the chance to just sit back and enjoy a great
take it all in.
So I had to, that first viewing, I had no notes, no nothing. My TV was off. I had my drink, my whatever I was eating, and I watched it for myself because I wanted to be just a viewer and watch.
Be an audience member.
And so then when you go back and you watch it again, and now you have the daunting task of mixing for your subscribers the two, like you said, the whole historical part of it. And I had a whole group of people that were here for all of that part. And then I had a whole group of people that were here for the different genres. What genre is this K-horror? Is this sci-fi? Is this more so in the vein of Indiana Jones and witchcraft and all of these things? And so merging the two and having to do my homework and study, and even getting more information, like a lot of the historical things they brought up I knew of, but I always would go back and see, well, what else can I connect to it, or what else did I see in the show that maybe I didn't realize, or I didn't know that might connect it to the show. So I would go back and do more homework. I was floored how many people didn't even like episode 1. I was floored immediately from episode 1. So many even Black people had no idea what a sundown town was. Just no idea. Didn't even think that happened. And that wasn't something that was relegated to just rural America. That was big city. Like my grandmother talked about that in Miami, where I'm from. So that is that's what was daunting for me as a reviewer. I enjoyed doing the reviews. Don't get it twisted, but it was work.
It's funny because my process was actually kind of the reverse of that. Like I first I was fortunate enough to get screeners. So HBO would allow the screeners to come out like maybe 4 or 5 days before the episode would premiere. So I would first go into it with my analytical kind of lens of criticizing it, breaking it down and being fair to it, right? Just because it is, and that's a conversation I guess we can have a little bit later in regards to when we come to support Black content, do we just have to like it because it's Black content, or can we actually criticize it like we would anything else, right? So I went into it in a critical lens, wrote down my notes, processed it, digested it. And then, like you said, if time permitted it for work and personal life, I would go back and then sit back, no notes, like you said, have some water, have some popcorn, and then sit back and watch it as the audience to see if it still kind of hits me, or if there's things that I didn't catch the first time, or whatever the case may be. And then I will go on and shoot my review. So very interesting process, no doubt, as far as, reviewing the show compared to some other stuff.
When I grow up in my reviewing stage, I'll get screenings, prior to, like you do. It's a time saver. I tell you, it's a time saver.
It
Oh,
saves you
I'm
so much time
sure.
to
I'm
be able to get
sure.
in advance, and schedule everything out for sure.
Right. And so now it's interesting that you mentioned that because what was that like? Like when kind of what's going to happen before
Mhm.
everybody else, and you
Mhm.
see kind of like the banter or the commentary that you might see in social media about what they think is going to happen
Yeah.
versus what you know. You're
Okay.
like, well, I can't really give that away,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know, what was that like for you as a reviewer? Because I would
Yeah.
love to have had that experience though.
Yeah, so I mean, it is something that so Lovecraft wasn't my first time getting a screener, so it is something you live and you learn about, keeping things. And number one, I always respect people's like. I don't do spoilers when it comes to like if I know things in advance, if I see a movie in advance, I don't spoil things. I want people to experience it just like I did. But for HBO, they would give the episodes out on Wednesdays or Thursdays, and the episodes would be Sunday. So I would always kind of similar to what the audience is. I didn't watch my episodes like maybe Friday or Saturday because I want to be just as fresh and authentic. I didn't want to, and some people I know a little behind the scenes, some YouTubers, they watched all the episodes, at least the first 5 episodes. They gave everyone the first 5 episodes the week before it came out. And some people would like you can kind of tell that they knew certain things and they weren't like they didn't want
Oh,
to spill the beans. So I didn't do that because I didn't want to be like this kind of person that I knew certain things and I couldn't. I would make predictions and all that, but I knew what the answer was. So I didn't want to do that. I want to be just as authentic and make it as real as honest for my audience. So I wasn't, like I
okay.
said, coming on camera being like, "Oh, I wonder what's going to happen next week," knowing that I
And
know it.
okay.
Yeah, so I didn't do that. I
I
watched it with the audience.
got one more reviewer backstage. If you're ready backstage, put a thumbs up. Okay.
Ladies
All
and
right.
gentlemen, it's Jonathan Mayer.
How's it going, fellas?
What's
going on,
going on? Go ahead, introduce yourself, your channel, how people find you on YouTube to the people, and tell them who you are. And all
Yes,
that.
yes. So I am Caped Informer. That's my channel name. That's what I go by on pretty much all social channels. Pretty much, I just review movies, TV shows, some internet stuff. I react to things like that. You could find me, Caped Informer.
Don't worry, I have mods. They will be dropping your channel links in the chat from time to time. Thank you, mods. I appreciate y'all. Y'all know I love y'all.
Appreciate
All my
it.
wonderful mods. So they'll definitely do that. If you could drop their channel links, and if you find their social media, if you could drop that two mods in the chat. All right. We talked about a couple things, sir. And I'm going to give you the same chance. When we talked about the trailer, how we felt about the trailer when we first saw it. How did you feel when you first saw the trailer? Were you in or out?
For the trailer for the first show, not like the episode.
Not the pilot, not the first episode, but like the trailer that told you, okay, there's this show coming.
You know what I mean? You know what? It didn't hit with me. The first trailer, when it first came out, it really didn't hit with me. Like, I couldn't tell what it was going to be about. I knew the people that are going to be involved in it, the actors, the producers, stuff like that. I like their past work, but the trailer it kind of just went over my head. And then I just saw so many people were like actively going to watch the pilot, and I'm like, you know what? Let me give it a shot. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did. It was probably my favorite show in a long time.
Were you hooked after episode 1?
Yes. I was probably the biggest fan after episode 1.
Oh, wow.
Man, it's funny. The trailer didn't do it for me. How about you guys?
Wow. The trailer, like I said, the trailer for me, it was the actors involved. It was Misha Green. So I knew I was in. But episode 1, I was like, yeah, I'm here for this. I'm here for all of this.
Yep.
From episode 1, from the Jackie Robinsons, the alien, everything. Some people that turned them all, I was here for it from the very beginning. I was here for all of this. And I was why I was here for it. Because I think, and this is just going to go down the road, and so I go down the rabbit hole. I think a lot of people disrespect the Black viewer and think that they won't appreciate things like that. Like they think that they have to stay within a certain box, and you can't mesh the two, or you can't mix the two, or you can't really allow the viewers to experience. And that's why I was glad that like all of those episodes touched on a different genre. They didn't even just stick to one thing. It wasn't just horror, it wasn't just sci-fi, it wasn't just, so they took you on this road and they made it authentically Black. And they were able to keep the story and keep some things that overarch from beginning to end. And so that's what I like. That was one of the good part.
Yeah.
So go ahead. I'm sorry. I feel like you had something to say, sir.
Oh no, I was just saying like no, I agree with you on that. And like yeah, how you said like the weird stuff, didn't think it was gonna like grab the black audience, but then like I'm so glad to see how well it did. And so like other shows and other like movies that come out, people like they can reference this and say, there is a huge audience that like are really into this kind of like this genre. You know what I mean? So I'm like, just think about how much more things are gonna come forth from just this show and its success. Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited.
We also, before you came on, talked about what it was like reviewing this show as opposed to other shows. What was that like for you? Well, let me ask you this. Did you have the luxury of having it ahead of time?
No. I wish I was one of those lucky few. I was not one of those lucky few. But no, it would have helped a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like I tried, like for the first couple episodes, I tried to watch it and then immediately go and try to write something and like get my thoughts out. But the episode would leave me so like scatterbrained and like I'm trying to like piece things together. Like I wouldn't be able to like write about it until like I slept on it, and then the next morning I'd be able to write about it. So like I'd have to like take that time and like put my thoughts together, maybe read some other reviews and stuff like that. It just, every episode just left me like thinking like, wait a minute, how about this part? How about that part? Like I just had to like sit and think about it. There's no way I'd be able to like just watch it and then immediately go and talk about it. Like it'll just be too much.
Like that immediately happened to me. I would say I was watching episode 2. I'd never forget. I was in the middle of watching episode 2, and I remember just putting the pen down. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna watch because there was so much. Like I was pausing, and it was like I had only made it through like 15 minutes of the show, and it was like 45 minutes in because I was pausing, trying to, I was like, screw this. I'm just gonna put the pen down. I'm just gonna watch, and then we'll do this later. Oh
yeah, it's too much. It was just especially episode 2. That one, I had to watch it at least 3 different times.
So we talked about this backstage a little bit before we came on, but I want to talk about this now with all of us and with the chat. So I talked about the fact that Lovecraft, with all of those other genres that it goes into, has gotten the eyes and reviews of a lot of people, as I call it on my channel, descended from the Caucasus Mountains, who would not normally review a show like this, who would not normally be invested in a show that goes down the road of teaching you some of the history of Black people and how horrible these yet to be United States of America have been to Black people. And so I often will watch some of the reviews from people who normally would not review it, and white people, I'll say. And sometimes I felt like they just missed it. Like they just did not get it. I don't know if it was them not trying to. I don't know if it was just, they just wanted to focus on, the sci-fi part or the horror part or that part of it. But I kind of felt like to a certain degree, they missed the message that, they were supposed to be, getting, and it was supposed to draw them in, but it didn't necessarily. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Because I could keep going.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to speak from, their perspective and like what drew them to it. But I mean, let's be honest, it was probably one of the most popular shows out for quite a while. So
yeah.
I mean, it's gonna draw all types of people to review it, talk about it, stuff like that. Whether certain parts resonated with them or not, I doubt it, to be completely honest. But at the same time, there was a lot of things outside of like things that connected us, like with race and history like that. There was a lot of sci-fi stuff, a lot of horror things that they could draw from and they could actually relate to and things like that. So I could see both points. But yeah, there's definitely aspects in this show that like only certain people of certain backgrounds are going to really be able to connect to and really feel what they're trying to talk about. And because the nature of the show is back from the Jim Crow era and stuff like that. So it's a lot of stuff that will connect with just people like us. So
yeah, and kind of going off that point, I think there is that idea that it did. There was certain reviewers would ride the momentum of what's the most talked about thing, the algorithm, working the algorithm to get more views and attention. I mean, there's that goes across any platform, YouTube, Instagram, whatever the case may be. But when it comes to people that aren't black or can relate to the story, I still think that Misha Green, she did such a great job of balancing out talking to the black story and showing black love, showing black trauma and things of that nature. But I don't feel like she neglected the other audience members, whether they are not black. I think that everyone can relate to family drama. I think that everyone can relate to not having a good relationship with their dad. I think people can relate to Montrose's story, not being able to come out and being afraid, especially during that time. But even now, during the times we live in now, I think there's still a lot. There's the sister stories in it, right? There's the classic hero story of Tick. So I still think that Misha Green did such a phenomenal job of showing something that black people have never seen on screen on HBO, which is adventures. We like you mentioned earlier. We love this type of stuff. We love sci-fi. We love action. We love horror. But then at the same time, she showed the appreciation of that time and what it was like to be black in America in the Jim Crow era. What it was like to be a gay black man that was afraid to come out because his preacher got sent to the asylum. His best friend Tommy got shot in the head in front of him. He was afraid to come out as a black man. It's that sisterly love of Ruby being a kind of more of a black and beautiful black woman, but she wasn't given the same opportunities as someone that was maybe more slim-waisted to get that job opportunity at Marshall Field. So there's those little things that Misha Green was able to do to just balance out the black story, but also make it relatable for all cultures and all people of all shapes and colors. So I thought she did a great job of doing so. But yeah.
Someone in the chat asked, do you guys think the younger African American audience really got it?
It's hard to say because obviously we don't know all the audience members there after they watched the episode what they took from it, but I think at least I could just speak from my experience. There were some things that I might have didn't know about certain aspects, not the big stuff like obviously Jim Crow era and Emmett Till and all that stuff, but there were moments where it was like if I wasn't familiar with it, what I did, and I do this for a lot of stuff, I did the research. So after I wasn't familiar with it, I went back. I'm like, oh, okay, and learn about it and appreciate it for what it was. But I don't know if everyone else did that. I don't know if everyone else took the time to say, oh, that was interesting, and just left it for what it is and then go back and do some research. So I really don't know if the younger audience really took in a lot of the stuff or if it went over their head and if they went back and looked it up.
Yeah. And there's definitely a thing about this show and the unique genre that it was in. I think it hit so much for I don't know how old you guys are, but I think we're all above older 20s or even older, right? But I think if we relate it to past black TV, black television, and sitcoms and that kind of stuff, and we relate where we've come from then to now, I think it has a bigger impact. So I guess from a younger audience viewpoint, if this was one of the first black shows that I was watching, it wouldn't have that big of an impact. It's just knowing just where we came from what kind of shows impacted us or what kind of shows actually got people to watch. I feel like that really spoke to me more. Just the genre has a voice now.
I think that even if they didn't necessarily get everything, there was the exposure to certain things and there was shedding light on certain things that now you can't say, oh, I never heard of that or I didn't know about that. So even if, they didn't get every single nuance, there were certain things that you, as a young person, you can't leave and say, well, I never saw anything about an Emmett Till. I never heard anything about a Tulsa massacre. Well, I never heard any, you can't say, I never knew there was a sundown town. There are certain things that you now have been exposed to, and then there becomes the responsibility once you have exposure to something, what you do with that. Then I think that becomes a larger question as well. One of the things I want to talk about, as with any show, there are always going to be some critiques where people
Mhm.
feel like they missed the mark. I even have some of my own. One of the ones, and I was totally on the opposite side.
Freeze on us.
Yeah, I think so.
Did I freeze? I think I froze. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
There you
That's
go.
my whole
back.
Travel in time like
blame
Hippolyta.
right.
Time travel.
That was Comcast taking me a time. No, but what I'm saying is a lot of people were not here for episode 6. I don't know why, because I loved episode 6. It was one of my top 3 episodes. But a lot of people didn't like episode 6. And how did you feel about that episode? I'm not going to. I just told you it was one of my top 3. But how did you feel about it? There was other scenes that people thought she missed about. Another one that before I let you go is the whole Christina reenacting Emmett Till.
Mhm.
That a lot of people took issue with that and had issues with that as well. Those were 2 moments that I can vividly remember. There was a large outcry about people having issues with. And what were your thoughts on those?
Well, just like you, episode 6, I love that episode. Just from a storytelling standpoint, I think for me, episode 6 was the most, from point A to point Z, from beginning to end, was the most like structured, the most cohesive story for me personally. It didn't throw in, all the stuff with the book of names and all that. It was just truly a love story and an interracial love story between this Korean girl, this Kamiho inside of her, and then, Tick with his own monsters. We saw a different side of Tick. We saw him falling in love for the first time in a very different relationship than what he has with Letty. So I'm right there with you. I think that's one of my favorite episodes, just because from like I said, a story point standpoint, it was like the most cohesive, contained episode of the entire season, and I loved it. But in regards to the Christine thing, it's still a head scratcher for me personally. Obviously, well, not obviously, but I interpreted that scene as she wanted to feel the pain that Ruby was talking about earlier in the episode, in regards to this young man losing his life at the hands of, white man killing him because of a woman accusing him of sexual. It was just like that whole true life story of him till it still just haunts me and is just a disgusting act of humanity. But I'm still kind of confused on what the purpose of her doing that, because Ruby didn't know what she did. So it's just more for her that she knew that she did that for Ruby, which, I mean, we'll talk about what she did for Ruby at the end of the season with keeping her promise to her. But that moment still doesn't hit me. And then she was laughing and she was crying. I mean, it's a very confusing scene, no less.
For me, first of all, the Emmett Till thing, I was not here for it. That was probably my least favorite episode. Episode 8 was my least. I think that was 8. Yeah, I think that was 8. That was my least favorite episode. Now, mind you, that probably is the best episode of countless scores of television.
That's the episode Misha Green directed too. That was the only one she directed.
That was the episode, and there were so many things I liked, but the thing, Christina just incensed me every time she came on screen. That episode, I was just so not here for her, and so that just kind of capped it off for me. I was like, really, what was this? What are you doing? What was the purpose of this? Because you can live. I mean, you knew that you paid people to come and get you. You're really not experiencing the same type of trauma. Let's be clear. Right. I mean, what was the purpose here? So that kind of missed me. But episode 6, why I liked it is the way they so quickly turned Tick from being this loved person to you hating Tick. Like so quick, like at the beginning of episode 6, you hated him. The fact that he came right up and shot old girl in the head like and didn't even flinch. Like you were like, oh man, oh wait, who is this guy? I don't know. And in my review, I said he went from being Tick to being Atticus. I don't know Atticus. I don't like Atticus. I like Tick. Don't like Atticus. I don't know that guy. But what's your thoughts on that, Kate Informer?
Yeah. So episode 6, I would definitely rank it probably one of my highest favorite episodes of the season. Like you said, it was very cohesive. The story told was very well done. And on top of that, I just love the performances from literally all the actors that season. I think it was a crime that Jamie Chung didn't get more episodes or more time. Like, she was definitely one of my favorite characters as Gia. and the story was just so interesting. I don't know if I'm just really like nerding out into the whole Korean culture type stuff that they were into, but like it really got me hooked. I would definitely watch a spin-off show just about that. But yeah, definitely. It another part of it showed us this darker, this grittier side of Atticus that none of us have seen before. And I thought that was super interesting because at that point, we've only really seen Atticus. We're kind of just plain like stoic hero type, like very steadfast. And it was just nice to see him have this other dark side that he always tried to hide or didn't really talk about. So I think that really added to his character and made him seem more real to me.
Right.
Yeah. So that episode was definitely ranked high on my list. The whole Christina act of that whole thing that still boggles me.
Yeah.
I mean, at first she did the whole conversation with her and Ruby, where Ruby tries to ask if she actually feels anything about it or if she's sympathetic, and she tells her like straight up no. And then she goes and does this, and I heard some of the responses. They're talking about, oh, she did it for Ruby, she loves Ruby, and this and that. I'm like, she never told Ruby, or there's no evidence that Ruby even knows she did this. So this was strictly for her. So I think the show just wanted us to see how far Christina would go for a cause or something, or just to prove something to herself. Like, it was just something to show, like, I don't know. I think they just wanted to show.
I think it went over a lot of people's head. I think that was one of the ones. That was a moment probably when they look back. They say maybe if we could have that scene back, we probably would. But that's what makes a great show, flaws and everything. Favorite episode.
Oh, that's easy for me. It's still Sundown for me. Just because, again, I'm a sucker for good pilots, and I think regardless of people pros and cons throughout the entire season, there's no denying that I think collectively speaking, people were hooked after that first episode. And like I said, episode 2, 3, and on, some people popped in and out of the show. Some of the genres maybe didn't hit with them. Some of the subject matters didn't really connect to them. But I think collectively speaking, there's no denying the brilliance of that first episode. Again, we start off with the sci-fi elements, and then we meet these characters in Chicago. We meet our heroes for the rest of the show. And then we go, I'm a big horror fan. We go into the woods, and in horror, when you go in the woods, ain't nothing going to be nice. So seeing, and then even before that, the cop that pulled over at Tick and Tick, Uncle George and Letitia, just seeing that racism and having him plead to let him go and make a U-turn. And then that car chase, he couldn't go more than 25. I mean, literally, I was on the edge of my seat the last 25 minutes. And then when we go to the woods, and then they're in the cabin, I think that first episode to me was just like flawless and really kind of set the tone of what love. Like, if someone asked me if they were under a rock for the last 2 months, what is Lovecraft Country about? I tell them to watch that first episode. It is not only the cool monsters and all that, but the true monster of the show is the racism and being in the Jim Crow era. And I think that first episode truly encapsulates what Lovecraft Country was about.
Favorite episode, sir?
Geez. It would probably have to be either a tie between that first episode or probably episode 6. I'm gonna go back to that one, man. It just had so many, like, the reason why I like episode 1 is the total opposite why I like episode 6. Like, episode 1 tells you exactly what Lovecraft Country exactly was. And like, you could get exactly what you're going to get into from that episode. Episode 6 is the complete opposite. It tells you completely nothing what Lovecraft Country is about. But it takes that and makes it into one of the most best episodes I feel like they could have done. Like, you get a crazy good love story in there. We get a crazy good backstory. We get some great connections to like the Korean War and like all this like other deep history that I think a lot of shows haven't touched on before. We get some Korean folklore stuff that touched on like demons and all this kind of crazy stuff, and like it just did so much. I feel like that the performances in there just hit for me just the best.
Mine is still 9. Episode 9. I think what hooked me with episode 9. The acting. Before we get to all of the acting, that I'm a huge Michael Kenneth Williams fan.
Yeah,
going all the way back to.
I love that he works with HBO too. Yeah,
I don't know what kind of contract he has, but I know in his contract it says I must do an HBO show every so many years. His it is but say what you want. He always blows it out of the park. He always knocks it out of whatever he does.
Yep.
And between his character, that episode 9 was so good to me. Like I was here for that, just the sheer acting. For me, even with Michael Kenneth Williams, it wasn't even what he was saying. It was so much of the unspoken acting that he did. Just the emoting with the facial expressions and body language and just the glares that he would give sometimes when you just knew and you felt the full gravity of everything in the moment. And I felt like we needed that in order to, it tied a whole lot of things together. You had Letty with the fire, even though I was screaming at her, please run, but she,
we know she can run too. Letty can get those.
Right. She ran every other episode. In this episode, at the end, when we need her to run, she's over there taking her time, like, oh, I'm just holding the book. Yeah, I'm walking through. Come on now. But that Hippolyta turning into Arythea Blue at the end was a huge moment that I think kind of got overshadowed a little bit. The whole Montrose, two parts got me. Little Montrose with his first love guy, when he watched the guy get blew off the face of the earth, I was like, okay, yeah, I was done. And then Hattie, when Hattie died, I was like, y'all, I'm ready to go on to glory. When Hattie died, I was like, that was done. But that's my favorite episode because it just the writing and the acting there was so good. It almost was lost on some people what actually was going on, the Tulsa massacre, because of how great the storyline, the fact that they tied you all the way back to the baseball bat in the first episode. At that moment that you were like, oh. And so I had that moment. I mean, I had a lot of episodes that were great for me. Like, what was that episode 7, the Hippolyta episode?
I Am.
The I Am. I did so much research for that, finding out who. I mean, I knew who Josephine Baker was, but knowing who Naui was, the Homean warrior princess, and that whole thing about Wonder Woman being inspired by that African all-female African militia group army, and the fact that and the connection with Hippolyta, Diana, Wonder Woman, and her mom. I was here for all of it. I liked that part too. Like that really, tied the whole Afrofuturism genre that they tapped into, that a lot of people were weren't even aware of. But that whole thing too, I loved that episode as well. That I Am episode did. I like that one too. That was a good one for me.
Yeah, no, I'm right there. When you mentioned episode 9, that's like in my top tier as well. I mean, like you mentioned, when Hattie literally has the most ultimate sacrifice I've seen, the most powerful scene when she can potentially save her immediate family, but she knows how important it is to save the future of her family and her legacy and burn alive, which actually, when people were talking about Letty walking the fire, I think, to me, I took that as like more of a symbolism, as her thematically speaking, walking through the fire, just like she just witnessed Hattie doing. She now has this responsibility in her hand, and this is her kind of walking through the fire, and she has the invulnerability spell in the Mark of Cain. So I kind of love the kind of, yes, she had time. She took her time, but I kind of love that moment though. She definitely did. But no,
not yelling at the screen. I know you were yelling for her to. I know you were.
I was still so wrecked from seeing Hattie die the way she did. It didn't even really hit me that she was like, "We got to get to this portal. We got to get in there." I was just so like immersed into that whole moment. The last 10 minutes of that was so powerful.
Just kept. It was just them cutting back to Atticus and trying to like hold up Hippolyta together while she was trying to keep the portal open. It was just that, and like her like salivating and all this like crazy shit happened. I'm like, yo, just like please, just like get back.
She's literally holding on.
I'm like, yo, like it's about to blow.
Oh man, that's so funny. Now, what's so funny is a lot of people are not here for the finale, and I've watched the finale 3 times now.
Same here.
And the more I watch it, the more I'm here for it. Like the first watch it, I still loved it, but I was like, okay. But the more I watch it and I made some connections, I was like, okay. Like the first, you kind of tapped into one of the ones that I made when Hattie talked to Letty in the finale, and Hattie had to tell Letty, "Oh, you're gonna have to trust me," because she told Letty that Tick was gonna have to die, and you knew Letty wasn't here for that. And she told Letty, I guess she probably said, "Listen, remember how you told me I had to die?" Because you knew Hattie had power. We learned then Hattie had some power. Hattie knew that she could have possibly saved her family, but she trusted Letty and what Letty told her. So I felt like that came full circle, hence the title, where Letty had to trust Hattie and say, "Listen, I'm gonna just go with it. I know he got to die. I guess we got to make this sacrifice." And I also felt like I talked about on my review the fact that they kind of like ingratiated her into the family. She became one of those 4 women in that, ancestry. I kind of felt like that was this whole rite of passage period for her, where she kind of became a member of that family to continue carrying on the lineage, because the female lineage line seemed to be a very important part in that family.
Yeah, I mean Hannah, on down to Hannah, Dora, Hattie, and now Letitia. Yeah, that's definitely very much true. And to your point about the finale, so I've seen it 3 times as well. First time I watched it, this was no notes. This was just sitting back watching the finale for what it was. I thought it was lukewarm. I thought it was mediocre at best because, and I guess we'll talk about it collectively, like the negatives of the show. The idea that it is an anthology kind of villain of the week, monster of the week, different genre of the week, and then we would not answer certain questions, and then it would only answer certain questions when it just felt kind of inconsistent when in regards to questionings being answered. And I felt like the first 10 minutes of the first episode of the finale was a lot of exposition. This is the first time we're being introduced to the ancestral plane or the ancestral place that we've never visited before, and us understanding that and understanding the sense of time that Letitia was able to learn the native language of the spells and learn all that all within 10 minutes. So I feel like they rushed so much. And it was moments like Dora and Tick seeing his mom, which we still don't know how Dora died. That's a mystery. But this is the first time he saw his mom for we don't know how long. I just wanted to be in that moment a little bit longer. I wanted Hannah to have a little bit more moments on the screen about what her sacrifices and all that. So I just felt like the first 10 minutes was just so rushed. And then the what's his name, Titus stuff just didn't really sit with me well. But on a rewatch, second rewatch, third rewatch, then I started to appreciate it more. But I still have some flaws within that finale, to be honest.
Yeah, no, the finale is not one of my favorite episodes, but the more I watched it, the more I kind of felt it. I don't know. That's just how it was.
Yeah, well, I'm still on my first watch, so it's still kind of there on the low side for me. But yeah, the same criticisms. It was just so many different moments that I felt like needed more time in, right? Like when
even Ruby dying, like I felt like Ruby needed Ruby death.
Yeah, that was a big disservice.
Lesbian moment or whatever. And now she has this big accepting herself as a black lesbian woman.
Yeah, that was
like
they killed her off screen. Yeah,
we got two crazy in-depth sex scenes with her and the William, Ruby and William, right? But when they finally comes down to Ruby and Christina, now we got to go off screen. You just have to just use your imagination. Like I'm like, that's cowardly. Like, come on. But yeah, the one
I thought at some point we would get a whole lesbian scene as well. But I know a lot of people are upset about that. Shouts out to those people who are upset. I got what I needed sexually out of the show. I see my those people who know what I'm talking about. See my review of episode 9. So what was so let's talk about one of the things that was the best part of this show, the spoken word and the music, the mixing of so much black arts. You got so many different genres of music, so many different people speaking on each episode. Like it was a thing, like you knew at some point toward the end of the episode there was going to be a spoken word and you looked forward to, okay, how is this going to mesh Okay, who are they going to choose? Why did they choose? Like, it was a whole big thing every time. Going from like Nina Simone to Rihanna, I think they even played, as I call her, colorism Keisha, light skinned Keisha song, one of those episodes. So, what was your thoughts on that? Because I loved all the music.
I loved all the spoken poetry. I thought that stuff was beautiful because it was just perfect to what was going on the screen. The music, I'm a little torn on. I'm a sucker for scores and a sucker for soundtracks because I think it's a character within itself. And I felt like the modern hip hop, the modern rock and roll from Marilyn Manson, some of that stuff took me out of the scenes. I think of Rihanna, bitch, you better have my money. I think of Cardi B, which I actually had a fun time with that, a money moment, and obviously the Metamorphosis episode 5 with Ruby. Some of that stuff was kind of crowd pleasing, but I felt like the music to me sometimes took me out of the scenes because it didn't feel like it was fit within that scene. I think of the finale in particular, that Ready or Not song, which played to me way too long, and I would have preferred Letty and Tick to just be either silent as they were in the scene or have them talking, because I did not like that song choice. So I'm kind of torn on the soundtrack. Some of the songs were perfect, more the gospel music, the more subtle music, but then some of that more modern hip hop stuff, which I like those songs. I just didn't like it in the context of when they put it in the scene. So I'm torn on that, but the poetry was like flawless.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with that. The modern stuff, a lot of the modern stuff took me out, especially the Cardi B and Rihanna stuff. Like, I get what they're going for, but just from like the scenes where we were with the show already, I'm like, do we need this here? Like you have my attention already. Like, you don't need to, I don't need to go to the club right now. Just keep me in the scene. But yeah, the spoken word is probably one of my favorite parts. Yeah. It brought so many scenes that were already good, but like brought them to like God tier status.
Yeah.
So.
I got a super chat. Thank you so much, Anita L. She says, where are we at? Where did it go? Oh. Darn you. That's what Hattie said before she died. Letty was on fire wearing the same dress she was when her and Tick had the vision with Hannah. Was she? She did have when she first, her stomach caught on fire at first. I think that was the same dress, wasn't it?
That was. And the same with Tick's wardrobe as well. Yeah, very nice little connective tissue there to kind of call back.
That I didn't put that together. Now, characters. Who are you here for? Who are you not here for, and why?
I mean, top tier. Number one character for me was Liddy. And Journey Smollett submitted her Emmy winning moment in episode 3 in the haunted house episode when she was in the basement with the speaking to get the ghost back into or to have them go back in peace. I thought Letty was just, for me, every time she was on screen, she was just fantastic. I love her arc as the character, kind of being this sister, this family member who's not too connected to family, but she ends up having a family at the end. Her and Ruby's scenes were just fantastic. The black love that we saw between her and Tick was fantastic. But I think individually speaking, she was, at the end of the day, she saved the day, right? She has the book of names in her and claiming that, and took the magic away from the white people. So I think for me, Letty is just such a fantastic character and had one of the best arcs. And then someone that I wasn't expecting to be in my top tier is definitely Montrose. He definitely has some questionable stuff, the Yahimi stuff, Yahama stuff. I think even Misha Green has come out and said that they kind of botched that because they really didn't explain too much what was going on with that. But Montrose, he really kind of grew on me just from his, we talked about his performance in episode 9 and not really saying much. I think of episode 5 when he came out with him and, Sammy and having that coming out party and going to the club and finally smiling and just, being himself for the first time. I thought he kind of came around and that scene going back to episode 9, how much he had to sacrifice to be Tick's dad, even if he's not his biological dad with Uncle George. I thought that moment was beautiful. And then when he was trying to wake his son up, Tick, come on, Tick, get on up, Tick.
Yeah, that took me out. That took me out right there.
I cried, man. That guy.
I think the whole collective people who were watching was like, we were
Yeah.
there grieving with
Come on,
Montrose, like,
Jake.
no,
No.
wake
Yeah.
up, wake up.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, Letty, Montrose, and then as far as like someone that maybe I'm still torn on Christina. I had some moments when I'm like, okay, she's a good anti-villain because she would do stuff that would help our heroes. She would do stuff just for her own gain. And then she does things like save Liddy at the end of the episode just to keep the promise to her sister. I'm just very confused on how the show wants us to perceive Christina. Was she
No,
yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off. Now, what do you mean? Because I missed that whole part about her saving Letty at the end.
So when I first saw the episode, I assumed that either Letitia knew magic and put a spell on herself to protect herself, or it was the fact that her child was inside of her and has the bloodline and has the birthmark, so she was going to be protected. But if you see that flashback when Gia's attached all three of them, you see that they go to a scene where Ruby's on top of the tower and she recites the words to re-immerse the Cain, the mark of Cain on Letitia. So she kept her promise to Ruby, even in death, when Ruby died. She kept the promise that because Ruby told her, "Do not harm my sister," and she even says that in the tower, like I kept a promise, and even though she ultimately threw her off the top of the tower or whatever, but she kept her promise and put the spell back on her so she wouldn't die because she promised Ruby she wouldn't kill her.
I missed that whole thing, and I missed that whole part. I missed all of that because I think some kind of way I connected it to the spell, that the Hannah spell actually taking hold, and so it broke whatever Christina did to Letty, and that's how the market came out. I missed that whole part. Like I missed all of that. Like I just missed all of that. I thought that you can't tell me Letty is not feline because she got way too many lives. Way too many lives.
She did that twice, yeah. No, but yeah, if you rewatch that scene, you do see Ruby / Christina reciting the words to put the marker came back on her to protect her.
Right after she fell.
Yeah, well, no. So when Gia is connected to Tick,
Christina at that point?
No. So when
the flashback.
The flashback.
She saw her past, and you see in the past that Ruby, the last thing she did before she died, or Christina died, she recited the spell to get the protection back on Letty.
Gotcha. I missed that. It went by so fast. Now that I thought that was something that I hated because there was a lot of important information when the tales went and we saw the memories. There was a lot of information that went by real fast. I was like, wait, that's too much. Wait, all of that. The whole teaching D how to use show cards, and it was a lot going on. Writing a letter to Montrose and giving it to Hippolyta, which means he had to have told Hippolyta he was going to die too. There was just a lot going on in that thing. I'm sorry, Cape Informer. I did not let you tell me who is your favorite.
No, so yeah, definitely I agree with Letty is definitely up there. The episode 3 in the haunted house. I feel like that episode was definitely one of the strongest, but it just since it was so early, I feel like so many people forgot it. It didn't get as much credit as it may needed to have gotten. But she solidified herself in some Emmy winning performance right there and then. So she's definitely up there for me. Same thing with Montrose. Didn't like the guy at first. Couldn't stand his character, right? I'm like, am I ever gonna like this guy? He became one of my favorite characters by the end, right? Just the actor himself and the character. It was just so much growth and just so much emotion and so much family history. And he represents so much different sides of Black tragedy and different sides of there's so much different struggles with that character, and it's just the bad parts about him you just begin to just bond with and understand, not bond with, but sympathize with and understand. This he was one of the characters that just because you didn't like him at first, he became one of your favorite characters. So yeah, definitely him. I thought I was gonna like Ruby by the end, man, but it's something about Ruby just didn't really stick with me. I just couldn't really figure out what she wanted really in like what was her real goal? You know what I mean? It started off like she wanted that, nice fancy job with all the rest of the white people, and she didn't want to, she didn't want to be discriminated against and this and that, and then after she found the potion, it started to switch to a different prerogative, and then she kind of fell in love with Christina out of nowhere, and it was her story just kind of got convoluted for me. I just couldn't really feel her purpose or her motivations anymore. I just still believe she deserved more at the end. We deserve to know, what happened to her, but the character didn't stick with me by the end. Of course, it's Atticus. Atticus, he's a great lead, going through. Like I said before, episode 6 got me to see a different side of him, so he was more fleshed out character for me. And I think the breakout character of this series was definitely Dee, which disappointed me just because we found it out so late in the game. But yeah, she was one of the best breakout characters. Her episode was definitely probably one of the scariest and just one of the most impressive. Just seeing her lead it by herself. She definitely has so much more capabilities. It's a shame we didn't get to see it, but I feel like the ending kind of like gave us a glimpse that like if they do make a season 2 or whatever, like I think she will take definitely more of a lead role, if not the lead role. So that makes me excited.
I thought in the beginning Christina would be my favorite character because I love a good villain. I love a good intellectual villain. I love a brash villain who tells you exactly what they're going to do and does it. And that was Christina.
Yeah.
But there was just, oh man, I got to the point, and I guess that's the beauty of it all, where she was just so unlikable for me. And I love a good villain, but I just could not nothing in my body could like Christina. Montrose is my favorite character. Seeing the whole arc, we didn't even get Montrose until episode 2. We didn't even know what he looked like until episode 2. And then to see his whole, because we thought, Courtney B. Vance would have a bigger, part in the series.
Uncle George,
seeing how Thick felt about Uncle George as opposed to how he felt about his dad, and seeing that whole storyline and how everything changed, even in the arc of that episode 9, where he still told him at the beginning of that episode, listen, when we done with this, I'm done with you. I don't want no parts of this. I mean, he did negate the fact that his mom was kind of a whore who slept with 2 brothers at the same time. Let's just be clear. She has no idea who her baby daddy is. And, she don't know. That means you had sex with these 2 men probably around the same time. You know what I'm saying? You getting bust down. But I mean, I don't want to disparage this man's mom, but let's just be clear.
It was a very gray area there. It was very.
They said they had a unbreakable bond. I don't know what kind of bond that is.
I kind of
situation. I don't know.
They're trying to paint it at the end, like she was trying to explain it to Atticus at the end in that ancestral realm or whatever. She tried to paint it as like a beautiful bond they had and this and that. I'm like,
Mom was getting bust down. But Montrose is probably my favorite. My favorite character. Just my favorite. Now, couple things that I don't want to keep y'all too long. I know y'all have lives and families, and it's a Tuesday. Wait, what's today? Tuesday? Yes, Tuesday. I wanted to talk about some of your theories leaving the show. Of course, is Tick really dead? That's a theory that people have. Is he really dead? I mean, this is Lovecraft Country where people come back to life over and over and over. Hell, Ruby ain't dead for real. She's in a comatose state. So, but my question now that I'm thinking about that, with Christina dying, I guess, does that mean that William, Dale, and Ruby are gonna die?
Well, I think Dale was already dead because I think Ruby pulled the plug on her, or Christina pulled the plug on her when she was like, "Oh, I always wanted to be a red or something." I thought she just killed her right then and there. Actually.
Oh, okay. I don't even remember that part. Okay.
Yeah, and then as far as like I mean, I guess the realtor would come there and find their bodies and maybe reveal it to them. Or I don't know. They have magic now, so they could probably do a spell, like a finder spell, to see where Ruby is and find her body. So I don't know. I think there's still possibilities of, if there is a season 2, which I think there will be, to get Ruby back and to have her be reborn. And very similar to how Christina explained how you can reborn. These people can be reborn as their flesh, some spells, and I'm pretty sure they can bring her back. So as far as William goes, I don't think there's any more purpose of William, because Christina's dead, and what is he going to do now? But I definitely could see Ruby coming back if there will.
Put in the chat that Gia knows where Ruby is.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, because she knows the. I don't know if she would know the location. I don't know if she would have ping know where it is. I know she knows she's in a basement somewhere, but I don't know if she'll know she's in the Chicago basement in Christina's house. But definitely could be the case.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I think Tick is dead, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I don't think they're gonna bring him back. I don't think they're gonna bring him back. I am hoping maybe as a ghost or something. I don't know. Maybe without that genre, maybe explore that. I mean, we see his ancestors kept coming back, so I mean,
yeah.
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
I think is they're going to do like a multi-dimensional kind of thing. I think they'll Tick is dead in that dimension, but he'll be alive in different Earths. I think they'll travel different Earths and stuff like that. I think they open that box with Hippolyta and going to different Earths and that kind of stuff. So I think they'll explore that a lot more. And then they left that clue with the D at the end with the robotic arm, and she was the one that pushed Tick back into the portal or whatever. So
we found that out in episode 8.
Yeah, so it's gonna be like a Flash situation, like a multiverse theory type shit. So I think it's gonna be cool.
Yeah, I agree. And the only thing with that though, and that's what I love time travel, but when you implement time travel in something, it can get very confusing and very kind of, like you said, the Flash. That's why I stopped watching the Flash.
Yeah,
they kept contradicting themselves and just writing themselves in a hole. Yeah. So that's the only thing is, if they do take Tick out of another multiverse, then that disrupts that timeline, and who knows what that can come up with. But I think if there were a season 2, you hit it on the head. I think Dee's going to be a lead character, and also think George is going to be a lead character once he's born. They're going to be the new generation of protecting this spell, because I think, going back to your theory of multi-dimensional things, I think that, again, which Captain Lancaster, I'm still kind of, I think his overarching conclusion to his story was kind of weak, but his whole thing of wanting to get in that Ori, I think that he still has his members of his lodge that can maybe go out to his plan and still get that Ori object and go back in time to, like you just mentioned, another timeline to get the Book of Names and have it in their possession. And that's where Dee and George have to protect the Book of Names and fix the timeline. And who knows, again, time travel shows and movies can get very confusing and very messy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask, do we see a season 2? Can we not see a season 2 is the question.
Ooh. For me,
I don't see there not being a season 2, only because of the views. One, the numbers. 1, 2, Misha Green is here for it. And the other actors and actresses are here for it. I mean, you pretty much kept everybody alive except for Christina and Tick.
Right. And we know Tick is Jonathan Majors is killing it right now. I mean, he's going to be in the Marvel movies in the next few years, so he's going to be really busy.
Yeah.
And I think with episode 8, you saw very calculated at episode 8 is what was our introduction to Dee. That's where you saw Dee's character start to take over. Now, one of my theories is just my theory. We know from comic books, villains always start off great. They start off as good people intentionally. And they always have something traumatic that happens to them early on that turns them.
Yeah.
I see Dee becoming a villain. I can literally see her channeling, and I put the parallel because her not being able to draw anymore. Yes, she could use the bionic arm, but
it's not the same.
It's not the same. She's not able to draw really anymore. And so by her not being able to channel her rage into, her art and things like that, I could see it coming out in nefarious ways and her becoming a villain. She has a whole Shoggoth a whole bio. I could see her going and doing horrible things to the KKK and evil white people descended from the Caucasus Mountains all over the fruited plains.
When you said that, I thought of that line going back to the time travel episode where Tick said that he went to the future, saw his son, and was pulled out, but he saw a bunch of people, a bunch of white people rioting. So I wonder if D, to your point, goes into different timelines to take out the KKK, to take out these influential, horrible white people throughout the history of time, especially when it comes to slavery. If she goes back and tries to reclaim how black people are considered in society, and she kind of messes up the timeline and becomes, like you said, a villain in herself in a certain extent because she's messing up the timeline. And I mean, you hit it on trauma. She's lost her dad. She lost her best friend in Emmett Till. Her mom left her when she needed her the most. So she has those villainous traits to do something like that. So yeah, man, there's a lot of potentiality for D being an anti-villain turned to a full villain by a season 2.
Yeah, and her last line still resonates with me. They'll never learn. I'm trying to point that down to like they'll, as in white people, they'll as in her family or whatever. Right.
Well, they never learn. They leave her everywhere she goes and keep leaving her. So she's like, they'll never learn.
Right. Because I was like, you left this little girl in the middle of the woods where y'all know their bosses and things going on. Like, like, why did you leave her?
It's always the worst thing that happened to her. Like, the worst.
Yeah.
I see somebody asked the question, was Christina really a villain? Should she told Tick she wasn't like her dad and that she didn't want to kill Tick. It came with the spell. Do you think had they given her the book, she would have kept her word? Hell no. There's no, I don't even hesitate in thinking Christina was not here for anybody but Christina.
Yeah.
She would goes back to she kept her word to Ruby. She kept her word. Yeah.
She kept her word. And now the difference between her and Tick is she did make a promise to Ruby.
Yep.
She did utter out of her mouth, I promise. She did utter that out of her mouth. But I don't think that left unto her own, was she a villain? Absolutely, she was a villain. She killed her own dad. She was mad because she could not wield power. She killed her own dad.
What was her core motivation to be immortal anyway? You know what I mean? Like, because when you think of a villain trying to, their main goal is immortality, it's most likely evil or world domination, that kind of thing. But like, she never went into exactly what her goal was. Okay, I'm immortal, but where am I going to take that? Like, what next? Like, it was just, I want to be immortal.
The way I took that is, she mentioned she has, she's a white woman, she has white privileges and all that stuff, but she's still a woman in the 50s at that. So I always took it as her, and she said, being the many of first. So I always took it as her, again, going back to the time travel, her reclaiming the status quo of a woman being more dominant than men during this time. So I always took it her maybe trying to manipulate the idea, how the spectrum of how women are viewed in the world and changing that, and women being more dominant than men, because you go back to her story as her dad wanted a son, and which is actually Christina is a man in the book, but is a woman in the show. Her dad wanted a son, but getting a daughter. The sons of Adam never appreciated her because she's a woman. She's always Captain Lancaster, always laughing them off. The lodge is laughing them off because she's a woman. So I always took it as her wanted to change the economy of how women are perceived in the world, and them being the the macho, the more dominant species is the women versus the men. So I always kind of took that as her motives. And when it comes to her being a villain, I love villains, like you mentioned, but the best villains are the ones that don't think that they're wrong. They think they're heroes of their own story. So I don't think to the definition of a mustache twirling twin or a villain or a Lancaster, I think that she's more than just a quote unquote stereotypical villain. She's layered. She's layers. And that's why I don't think that she's fully on like that villainous side. She's a Darth Vader. That's how I look at her.
So one of the last couple of things I want to talk about is a lot of people. Did either of you or both of you see the SNL sketch that they did? This
Issa Rae.
Yeah, right. Explain. So there was an SNL sketch. Issa Rae, they're at a football game at a tailgate. She's trying to explain Lovecraft Country to it was a group of white and black individuals. And so nobody could get it. And they were like, oh, it sounds stupid. And it was kind of relegated to that. And that didn't come from nowhere. That is, something that you hear a lot of people across color lines talking about. And I say that because you have someone like a Jordan Peele, who's also an executive producer and heralded as this cinematic genius. And he has done the same things she has done, because a lot of people, like I said in my review, had no idea what was going on in Us. No idea. Let's be clear. But I think that he gets the benefit of being, I think there is some misogyny a little bit in there, definitely. But I think that it's not fair for her not to be lauded for what she was able to do with this show, and things like that, and even going back to Underground, but just brushing it off for people not understanding, knowing so many people have been heralded for movies and shows that we didn't necessarily understand when we first watched them either. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
So another executive producer of the show is J.J. Abrams, and if you guys have watched shows like Lost, watched movies like Star Wars, Star Trek, he is a mystery guy. So he likes to keep the elements, and that's why I think Misha Green, to me, she's kind of the best of both worlds of Jordan Peele. She's her own woman. Don't get me wrong by saying she's emulating their talents, but I'm saying as far as their sensibility, she has best of both worlds, where she has a great mystery box. And she also has this social commentary within her content, like a Jordan Peele. And when it comes to a 2-hour movie versus like a 10-hour, a TV watching experience, you get more fleshed out characters, you get more of the explanation. So I do think it is unfair that people just are confused. They throw their hands up in the air and say, I don't get it. So if I don't get it, that means it's bad, which is unfortunate when people kind of, don't do the research or really kind of dive deep into the symbolisms of certain things. But yeah, I think it is a little bit unfair that people do kind of just give up on the mystery aspect. And some people do get a little bit more flack of being mysterious or not answering. I mean, Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors, and a lot of his movies kind of leave you on a cliffhanger. If you saw Tenet, if you saw Inception, and a couple, Interstellar, he's a very ambiguous type of director and leaves it up to the audience to fill in the blanks, to fill in, this fantasy world, and you answer the questions on your own. But I think when it comes to Misha Green, I kind of love some of the mystery aspects, some of the questions that weren't answered to the audience. But there's also a balance of like, there's certain things that need to be answered to make it cohesively make sense. So I think just with more time, more projects on her belt, people are going to consider her to be one of the best writers and showrunners, and maybe transition into films of our modern time. So it is a bit unfair criticism, but I think, people always find something to critique nowadays. So,
and I think it's definitely a point that this was a TV series versus like Jordan Peele's Get Out was a film. You know what I mean? So like TV series, they can take a bit of a uphill. You have to actually like engage in a TV series. You have to come in week by week, or you have to binge it or whatever. A movie, it's a 2-hour thing. You could hear about it. If there's reviews immediately about it, you know what I mean? So it's like, if it's, movies smash it immediately. If a TV show's a smash hit, it's going to become a smash hit while it's going on. So like, she had that uphill battle of just being a TV series versus like a movie. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, like, Jordan Peele also had a little bit more like history behind him versus like Misha Green. Most people don't know her from wherever else, but Jordan Peele did have a TV show and that before that, so there was that backing him. So I'm just comparing like the two.
And I mean, to that point, to be fair, Twilight Zone isn't a big hit from Jordan.
No.
I mean, they got a second season, but it's not revered as Get Out or Us. It's not one of the best shows. So I mean, there is some, he still has his criticism, and like J.J. Abrams, not all his shows are great as some of his other projects. So yeah,
that's a good point. And I think if Jordan Peele came out with the Twilight Zone thing first, before he came out with Get Out or any of those other movies, I think it would be a different story. Way different story.
Yeah,
absolutely. Sure. I think one of the things that I always think about is certain shows, just television period, needs a shelf life, and sometimes it has to sit on the shelf, and then it gets heralded. Myself and some of my other reviewers that review a show like A David Makes Man, we talk about that all of the time, where that show, when it was out, nobody was watching it. Nobody was watching our review. Nobody knew what it was. But now, ceremoniously afterwards, it's heralded, getting so many awards. People are going back and watching it because it needed that shelf life, where, it could sit, do like fine wine and get better, with time. And I think that may also happen with this, even though it already had a lot of eyes. I can only imagine. I can actually see people studying this type of stuff. Like you see that all the time in different college campuses, where they take a show and it'll become a course and they will study, all of that. I could literally see that happening with something like this, because it does have so many layers and it has so many places where you can take it. There are so many different majors of study that you could actually, tie this show in. You could do a cross curricular for, so many different. Even if I wanted to go math, remember those episodes where Hippolyta would start talking about all these math computations and so forth, and talking about dimensionals and those types of things. It lends itself to so many different genres and so many different elements.
And to that's a really good point that you bring. I mean, this is a much larger conversation in regards to how we consume content. As far as shelf life goes, we are such in a different culture now, where it's just like you're on to the next thing the next weekend. That's why, like, the binging, Netflix binging things versus like The Boys being every single week to continue the conversation, like Lovecraft Country. But it is one of those situations where we're in this zeitgeist for a couple weeks for a show like Lovecraft Country, but then we're on to the next thing. We got The Mandalorian coming next week. We got, another show on HBO. So it is very interesting to see a show in today's times, how it's able to grow, or if it's going to be overshadowed, because we're continuously getting hit with new content, especially in this pandemic. Streaming platforms are coming out of the woodwork. CBS, HBO Max. I mean, everyone now has their own streaming service. So it's another uphill climb to continue the conversation, because we're always being hit with more and more content every single week.
Yeah. Takeaways.
I'll make it short and sweet, man. This show was groundbreaking on every level. Regardless of my criticisms with unanswered questions, some characters not getting the credit they deserve to end on a high note. Is it going to be a season 2 or whatnot? All that stuff put aside, this is something that we have never seen before on this, at least on this platform, HBO, with this type of budget, with this type of cast, front and behind the camera. So regardless of criticisms, flaws, whatever the case may be, this is groundbreaking, and it is so great to see Misha Green, Jonathan Majors, Journey Smollett, people that's been killing it forever. Courtney B. Vance, Michael K. Williams, Angelou Ellis, Wumi Mushaku, who's an up-and-coming actress who's fantastic. I mean, just seeing these people on the screen
effortlessly.
Well, it took a while. But yeah. But I mean, this is just something that we have never seen before, and I hope that this is rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. I hope this is a Black Panther situation where that movie destroyed the box office that year. It was the most highest grossing film and domestically in 2018. And then studios was like, oh, black superheroes can sell. Okay, let's have Jamie Foxx. We need you back in Spider-Man. Hey, let's get some more black actors. Let's get some more Asian actors and more diverse stories and more diverse directors and actors. So I think that Lovecraft Country will be that to at Black Panther was to the movie industry 2 years ago, will be that for the television industry, where we're going to see more black stories in sci-fi, drama, comedy, romance, and it's going to be on HBO. It's going to be on, more Netflix. So I think that's what this show is going to do for the future of television and movies of that sort. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Completely agree. Definitely going to move so much things forward. Black Panther was a good example of that's the first a really big major black superhero film, and all of a sudden all the studios are thinking about possibilities for this, and maybe we can make a new show out of this and this black actor and this, it's going to push so many ideas forward. It's going to be like, it's pretty much like the I think Get Out was a good example too, how it pushed like a new genre of black horror. And even though this show could be called black horror too. It has so many different genres, so many different mixes in it. It just proves that there's just an audience for this kind of stuff. There's a huge audience. It's going to keep growing. And I feel like how this was black centric, kind of crazy, like different genres, and this like a mix up of different things. I feel like it's going to move into different races as well. I feel like we'll see like, I don't want to say like an Asian or like a Latino Lovecraft country, but we'll see like their version of it. You know what I mean? I feel like it was moving into that kind of realm, and a lot more different, racial backgrounds are going to be able to tell their story, just because it works so well through this.
Misha Green talked about. I saw an interview where she spoke about the fact that she wants to go down that road to explore other peoples of color and tell their stories and things like that. I did see an interview where she talked about that. And so even with, you saw a little bit of that in episode 6 with all of that, because that whole dynamic with GI and her and the rest of the Korean culture and so forth, her loving the American culture with Judy Garland, and then them looking at her like, what, and so that whole dynamic. One of my takeaways is the fact that they did touch so many different genres. I do think it is going to open up. We will start to see more things dedicated to like Afrofuturism. Or more things along, the Indiana Jones or the sci-fi, where it is authentically black, and we can see that we can, celebrate those and enjoy it, and it will be watched. It will, because the almighty dollar reigns supreme, so it will make money, and people are here for it. And I think that the numbers for the show really are going to get a lot of the movie production companies looking.
Don't be surprised in the next few years, once COVID kind of whatever comes of COVID, see Hollywood movies. We're going to probably see a lot of stuff in the Jim Crow era in a horror vein, whether it be something that I thought Antebellum failed at in regards to slavery. But I think that we're going to start to see a lot more producers try to dive into the Jim Crow era and dive into, again, Watchmen did it last year with black generational trauma. So expect to see that a lot in Hollywood in the next few years. Hopefully good stuff too, though, not just stuff just to make it, just because it's a hot thing to do. I hope we don't see a bunch of trash just to do it.
We always want quality, because as reviewers, we will let you know. We will trash your show if it is not good. We will let you know in the nicest way. So last thing I want to do is give you all a chance to tell the people out there what's next for you and your channel. What are you looking forward to, or just television you say, I'm looking forward to just watching this, even if you don't review it?
I'm pretty much my next big show. I'm not sure which my next big show is, but I will be reviewing like any movies that come out like on HBO, Netflix. I'm still going to the theaters here and there, so I'm still reviewing that. Amazon Prime is releasing a lot of movies. There's a lot of stuff coming out that I've got to get to, so I'm actually kind of glad this finally, bittersweet that it finally ended, so I have a little bit more time to get to all those other movies that I'm going to. But but one of my favorite things is to follow along with TV shows and be able to review them on my channel, so definitely stick around. I will be doing a lot more of those. That was really fun.
Definitely. As far as shows go, I'm a big genre head, so I love sci-fi and I love Star Wars. So The Mandalorian is next week, season 2. Then again, going back to up top about one of the things I want to do on my channel is show that, Black people, we love everything. So, I love dramas. And then there's a show on HBO, The Undoing, with Nicole Kidman, and the writer of the people from Big Little Lies. They're going to be having a show this Sunday. Hopefully that's something to be, interesting and keeps me hooked every week. So that's something I'm planning on covering as far as shows go. And then again, being a big Marvel fan, WandaVision later this year on Disney Plus. I'm excited for that. So those are the shows I'm really looking forward to. And then as far as movies go, after we get done with this, I'm gonna be watching Borat 2 and Witches on HBO Max and put out a review for that. And a lot of, again, I love everything: horror, comedy, romantic comedies, and so on and so forth. So keep an eye out for all that content on my channel.
I'm looking for. I haven't started it, and I believe that the show has already started. It started earlier this month, but I'm going to start reviewing The Good Lord Bird, which tells the story of John Brown. If you're not familiar with the abolitionist John Brown, it tells his story, and is telling the story of, you know, being an abolitionist from a white person. And so I'm looking forward to that. I've gotten a lot of people told me that is pretty good. I'm looking forward to Mandalorian myself. And so y'all know me, I'll do what I always do. I'll be debaucherous and do what I do, and, you know, do my lives and stuff like that. But I definitely want to, before you do anything, when we go off, don't go anywhere. We do have the after party, so I could say some stuff to y'all in the after party when we're off live. But the after party is always better than the main party. Anyway, I definitely would love to want to thank you all for agreeing to come on and chatting with me and talking to my people and, you know, just breaking this down. I would love for us to do this again and get, you know, even more of us on, so that we can talk and break these things down. Because a lot of times, like we had on the show today, we all help each other kind of see things that we were like, oh, I didn't really, you know, notice that part. That was something I didn't really think about, you know, when I saw it. And just to watch, like I said, I watch all of your reviews, all of you all's reviews, so I kind of know that you all, what angles you all come from. But even now, sometimes I get, you know, different angles that y'all might be like, oh, I didn't never think about that. So I'm always looking to be debaucherous on my reviews. So I go down roads less traveled, seeing as how I call, you know, Dora a whore in my review, because I do things like that. Or we had the whole episode 9 where we spotlighted Tick's crotch because they gave us a whole lot of crotch, and I was like, let that make it past the editing floor. Wow, okay. But the things that we do anyway, it's been a great time. My people in the chat, y'all know what to put in the chat and stuff like that. I hope y'all enjoyed the conversation. Somebody said, would you want a prequel? I thought about that. I thought that they should either go way further in the future or go way back in the past, but I don't know. I trust them enough to go for the ride. But I thought about to go back in the past and really tell the story, or go to the George Freeman, the son.
Right. Yeah. I can see that for sure. And I mean, hopefully, again, it's really weird that we haven't got the official announcement. I don't know if it's a matter of scheduling with, again, Journey Smollett and, you know, Jonathan Majors being, you know, she's in Birds of Prey, and maybe she'll get her own show on HBO Max and bring her back because she's so popular on this show. And of course, like I said, Jonathan Majors, he's in everything now, especially when it comes to Marvel. So hopefully we get an announcement sooner rather than later. And I would love to continue this conversation with Lovecraft, even if it is a different cast and a true anthology with more people of color telling their story. So yeah,
to give other good actors an opportunity as well.
Opportunity, yes, sir. Yep.
Anything, Cape Informer, before I let you go? Boy, not before we let you go, but before we go to the after party.
No, the one show just came to mind that I actually am still currently reviewing. Is on break right now, but if any of you guys are watching, Ghost Power Book Part 2 is the sequel to Power, the Star series. Following that, so far so good. I was a big fan of Power here and there.
Show, we're gonna have a good conversation about that in the after. I got some about that.
So if you guys, definitely if you guys watch that, definitely sub because I am reviewing that, and we'll get back on it when it gets back from season break. So
nice.
Thank you to mods for putting their the channels out there in the chat. Thank you everybody for being vocal and active. And thank you for always doing what you do. Thank you for the super chats and cash apps. I did get some cash apps behind the scenes. Thank you all for that. Normally, I would give you your virtual blowjobs, but we're not going to do that because we have guests and we're going to keep it together for our guests that we have here. But thank you for your cash apps and your super chats that you sent. And with that being said, I'm gonna press the damn button and we're gonna get up out of here and go to the after party. Don't go nowhere, gentlemen. Hold on. Don't go anywhere. Let me press the button if I can find it. Lord, where's the button? Okay.